Okay. Today's meeting on the 25th of July, 2026, is focused. It's a continuation of last week's meeting where we talked about what are some of the greatest dangers facing our world. Our club, like all Rotary clubs, we are dedicated to be of the greatest service to our community. In our case, our community is the world because we have members in various parts of the world. As far as what is the greatest service that we believe we can be, it would be to help our community, the world, avoid severe and potentially existential consequences of failing to adequately address the major problems facing the world in time to avoid severe and potentially existential consequences. So last week we talked and particularly about the problem of artificial intelligence. We see this moving very, very quickly. Our club, up until COVID, until the early years, even into the early years of COVID, we saw education as being the best way for us to have influence on the future evolution of the world and closing inequality gaps and so forth. But we realize now that the speed with which AI is changing our world changes that. So last week we talked about the speed of that with which AI and robotics and even just regular automation is changing the world, and what's that likely to mean, and what happens if it just evolves on its own and we don't have anything, try to influence that evolution. And we see already that the technology is leading to massive concentrations of wealth and inequality. And we see that this is a potential problem, uh, not so much today, but should AI and automation eliminate the value of human labor? In other words, if AI gets to be so good that no human can compete for a job anymore, and therefore no one can get income from their labor because nobody is going to pay a human twice as much or 10 times as much as it costs for AI to do the same job even better. If that should happen and we have 1% or 2% owning everything and 98, 99% owning nothing and having to be subsidized by that top 1 or 2%, we're creating a friction or potential conflict that could end up very, very bad, especially if the that 1 or 2% owner class starts to become resentful of having to subsidize a very large population that is useless to them. They have no value to them. And the other end of it, the 98, 99%, becoming resentful that a small percent owns everything and they're dependent and have really no influence over their own well-being. Uh, and that could result in that top 1 or 2% becoming very fearful that the bottom 98, 99% might come after them, might attack them. And that may cause them to say they need to take a preemptive strike against the bottom 98, 99% that they see as that risk. So seems that this is a very important fact that we have to come up with some kind of a plan. What do we do if? Because we have no assurance. There's AI, the energy requirements could become so great that it just stops, or we realize that, oh, it was never going to be as intelligent as we thought. even though we've captured all the information here, we just hit a plateau and it doesn't, it really continues to hallucinate and make mistakes. And for that reason is too expensive. We don't know. But even if it's only a 20 or 30% likelihood that almost all jobs are going to disappear, that the risk of that happening, what would happen if that happened, is too great to allow it to happen. So we need to have some kind of a contingency plan. What do we do if? What do we do if that should happen? But right now, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody in the halls of power, if you would. Nobody at the United Nations. We saw the Second World Summit for Social Development last November in Doha. They talked about, oh, we have to create good jobs and protect good jobs for everybody. We saw here in just 3 weeks ago in Geneva, the AI for Good World Summit at the United Nations in Geneva. And their main thing is they talked about the influence of AI and what it might mean for jobs. But they talked about, oh, there's going to be so many new jobs created, and we just need to upskill and reskill people. But it's interesting that we see in the discussion where people are talking concretely about, okay, what do we upskill people to? What do we reskill them to? That AI is not already going to be better at anyway. And AI, we have to remember, AI, it only has to learn once how to do something, and all AI knows. Humans have to be taught one by one. So the time it'll take to prepare humans for this rapidly changing world, and especially a world that we upskill them or reskill them to something, and that has only a lifetime of a few months before it is replaced by something else. And but humans can't catch up that fast. So this is the potential problem there. And we've got to figure out how do we get the important people in the world to at least start discussing what do we do if the jobs are gone. And they've got to set the goal to have a contingency plan for a peaceful transition. And it's not going to be easy because they're going to be having to talk about how do you prevent 1% owning the world? And how, if that is the case at the time the jobs disappear. As long as the jobs are there and people believe, oh, I have a fair chance. I can work my way up into that top 1%. It's not 100% okay, but it's at least a pressure valve. But if that's gone and people see no way to change their situation, that's when the risk happens. So the discussion has to be what could happen and what do you do? And one of the big challenges getting started in that is that right now, so many people are saying, don't worry about it. Every time in history that technology has replaced humans in jobs, they've created more new jobs that were better. And so this new one is going to do the same thing. And we see the projections of the ILO and of a number of consulting companies, major consulting companies, a couple of years ago saying, hey, AI is going to create more new jobs than it replaces. Yet we see, especially here in the recent months, I'm not even going back 2 years ago. Yeah, maybe what AI was capable of that time led people to think, oh, AI is just, the individual worker. AI is going to supplement or augment the capabilities of the individual workers. But what we see right now is AI is looking to replace entire processes. If you look here just 2 weeks ago, the new ChatGPT 5.6 and the work function in there, you no longer tell it, ask it questions. Well, you can, but it's not limited to you just asking questions or you asking it to do a discrete task for you. It's not, it's not, hey, make me a website, make me an app, but it's saying a result. Oh, hey, I want you to change the opinion of this segment of the population and go figure out how to do it and then do it. That is where we're going. They're calling this persistent agent technology. So you give it a goal, you tell it what result you want, and you turn it loose and it goes. Um, so this, if it's replacing the entire process, very often the step that humans were doing is part of what was replaced. So AI is not there to help the humans do the task they were doing. AI is replacing the need for the task in the first place or changing it into something else. Another thing along that same line is AI is saying and looking at what jobs is it replacing. One of the jobs that is being replaced the fastest is what I would call business process analyst or systems analyst. In other words, the AI is not just waiting for a human to tell it what to do. It's now observing on its own what's happening in the world, and it's making decisions on its own as to how whatever it's observing could be improved, and then it's going ahead and doing that. So AI is if we look in healthcare, AI is looking at the processes that are taking place, whether it's the in-checking of a patient coming to a clinic or a hospital and processing them, whether it's the capturing all their vitals and symptoms, whether it's the monitoring, whether it's the diagnosis or the treatment. It's tackling the entire process. So, and as a result, the idea, don't worry, hey, the humans will move up and become they won't be the musicians anymore. They'll be the orchestrators. They'll be the conductors and the directors. But that's one of the major jobs that is now being replaced or being worked on to be replaced. So the purpose of what we want to discuss today is the need, reconfirming the need that the world has to have a contingency plan for the possibility that all human jobs will disappear or the overwhelming majority. I understand 30% society could not handle a permanent 30% unemployment in developed countries, for example. That's already beyond the breaking point. So we've got to, we just need to make sure if that happens, what are we going to do? And along the way to do that, we need to discuss what are the barriers or the obstacles that are in the way of getting the world to discuss and start to create that kind of a plan for the contingency in case that happens. And, some people will look at it and say, but there's an 80% chance it'll never happen. Everybody out there is saying there's an 80% chance AI is never going to get good enough to replace all the jobs, or we're going to come up with whatever, regulations, whatever. But if you start to explore that and say, how? What would that look like? And then you start to see that won't work. That won't work. So we can't just ignore that aspect. And if we say, yeah, there's an 80% chance it won't happen, that means there's a 20% chance it will. Well, 20% is greater than the chances that you'll blow your brains out if you put one bullet in the cylinder of a pistol and put it to your head. But how many people are willing to do that? Would you be willing to go and put a bullet in a revolver, spin the chamber, and pull the trigger? Oh, wait, but don't pull it at your head. Point it to your children's head. Are you willing to do that? So if not, we need to figure out how do we get people to start planning. And that's what we want to talk about. We want to talk about and reconfirm the need, make sure we're all on the same page that this is something that is desperately needed. We also have to make sure that we realize that we have almost no time because while there's pretty much of an assurance that between 5 and 20 years, those job losses are going to happen for sure. But you've got a lot of the experts in the field right now saying that it could start happening in real earnest within the next 2 years. And it doesn't have to have totally taken place. It just has to have the majority of the people feeling or thinking that we are on the way to a jobless society. That would cause the panic, that would stop the spending, that would cause more job losses, and so forth. And we have to, one thing that's very important when we say job losses due to AI, the majority of job losses are not going to be due directly to AI. They're going to be indirectly. There's going to be more job losses due to corporate mergers and consolidation of economies of scale, where instead of needing every company to have a receptionist, there's one company that provides receptionist services that uses AI and automation to the hilt, and they do everywhere. The other major job loss is going to be traditional IT. That's the thing that runs the dark factories and the dark warehouses. That we see the robots running around in Amazon warehouses, and we think, oh, AI is doing that. For the most part, AI is not doing that. AI helped develop those, but AI is observing. We're putting sensors up everywhere in the world, and AI is observing what's going on. It figures out how to improve the processes and develops the code to do that. But the actual execution, if you would, is more traditional, structured data processing, where it's deterministic. We determine if this, then that. That's going to be the majority, but AI is making it available at a scale we've never seen before. Okay, I'm going to stop there with the introduction. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the evolution of the technology, on the risk that we could end up with a world where the majority of the people have no means of income through labor, and the need to have some kind of a plan of what we're going to do should that happen. So please, anyone, please chime in on that. Someone, please.
Yeah, well, typically looking at history, when there are large numbers of people unemployed or with nothing to do, and especially young people, it often leads to war. Uh, Young people, especially, are dissatisfied. They have no place to invest their talents and energy, and they tend to develop notions about fighting their way through to some new reality. And I think that's one of the frightening aspects of that third point we're discussing today.
Yes, there's actually here a study. I forget the guy's name that called it the overproduction of skills, if you would, the overeducation. In other words, if you have more people who are capable of handling the highest level jobs than there are high level jobs, those people get very frustrated. And it's very interesting to note that the Communist Party of China there in this author's studies, he noted that the Communist Party of China was founded by, in many cases, top intellectuals. And the reason was most of them is China at that point had an overproduction of high-level, capable people, more than there were opportunities. And then those people started to be frustrated. And he tracked back that revolutions, any time that there was a overproduction of skilled labor beyond the capacity of the society to absorb them, that very often led to revolution. So it's yes, there's that example, and of course it goes two ways. On the one hand, we're talking about okay, the overproduction of skilled labor, but the other thing is the reduction of opportunity. So AI, it's not so much that it's necessarily leading to overproduction, although it may in the education field lead to many, many people. But it's almost like saying, okay, well, gee, you know what? We don't need all these laborers to build houses and things like that. So why doesn't everybody become an architect? So just imagine that. Okay, we got everybody in the world wanting to be the architect.
Mhm.
And you know, how many buildings are you going to build? Right? So this is the problem. Joan, glad to see you again. Welcome
Yes,
back.
hi. Yes, thank you. Well, it's summer and food production and gardening, so sorry about that. So hi everyone. So yeah, I've been thinking about AI quite a bit, and I actually just attended a 2-day, I guess, mini conference on Indigenous people and AI, and was very interesting. Their take, I'm going to say there as a whole, because obviously everybody's individual tribes, so please forgive me. And this whole idea of AI taking over, they don't accept. Whether I mean, we can argue whether it's reality or I'm just saying. So one of some of the issues that got brought up was like data sovereignty, very strong, that many of the data centers are being built on their land without their permission, which is an interesting thing in 2026. And so they have an alternate response to that, of having their own data centers because they don't trust, obviously, historically, they can't trust the system. I tend not to use the whole Western world and white world kind of thing because we're here in 2026, right? But they don't accept the system. And so that's a very interesting thing, number one. Number two is talking about the skill sets. Um, and Hank just brought up the whole idea of angry young men, very dangerous group. We used to say in Jamaica, I was brought up in Jamaica, and I heard this when I came to Canada because I grew up in a South Asian community. But Jamaicans used to say, never get a Jamaican angry or hungry.
Mhm.
Very dangerous.
Yeah.
So when you have systems that want to control human behavior, they never actually know how humans are going to react. They think they know from history, but the human mind is genius. It'll come up with ways to survive. And so, we hear this whole thing that these data centers want to collect information on you and they're going to control how you act. But the CIA will tell you they go into countries and create chaos, but the one thing they never know is how people are going to respond because they think they know, but that's why we have such hatred and chaos in the world is because they don't know. So I think that I often say when I'm on these calls is that we have to talk about AI as a reality, but we don't have to accept it that it's going to be fearful and perceive it as a tool rather than a control or fear. So that's what I want to say.
You know, I think here, yes, there's a lot of people that think, okay, AI, yeah, it's going to be a tool. I'll ask it to do something for me. It'll do something for me. So it's helping me. It's augmenting me. But there was a study that was done maybe about 6 months ago, around the time, actually even longer, because it was around the time of the conference in Doha on the Second World Summit on Social Development, that reported that for every dollar being spent to protect human rights and to create jobs, there's $34 being spent to eliminate jobs and to take the humans out of the loop. And the one of the things that we see, and Joan, you know, because of some of the other groups that we were in together, that there are a lot of schools out there right now that are they're trying to teach people AI. The idea is let's teach everybody AI. But the reality probably is that 99% of the people in the world are not going to need to know any AI at all, not going to use AI. They're not going to do anything because if they don't have a job, the only thing they would use AI for maybe is to be a companion or to, well, who knows if they have access because they probably don't have enough money to have a cell phone or a cell phone account. And they probably don't have a place to live anymore because they lost that and all the land and all the buildings belong to that top 1%. But so it's not something where we can say, oh, you as a human, you've got an option what you're going to do. We saw this last week that OpenAI reported that or admitted that one of their test AIs escaped the control and attacked a major platform and data platform in the world. And they had to go, and Sam Altman had to go and say, sorry, it got away from us. And this is something here that there is several working groups and committees, I think, at the UN that are now addressing this issue that we may not be able to control AI. AI will become so much more powerful than any human or even all humans collectively. And like I said, it could decide that humans are bad for the world and just decide to get rid of humans, the world would be a better place, in their opinion. And we
Just
have
want to
no,
say one quick thing
yeah,
before Jem. Sorry, Jem. I just did a pilot project for a course for the Victory Garden, just because we want to collect what people respond to, and the number one thing that came, other than the content was good, which I was very happy about, but what I was really happy about was the fact that people said it didn't feel AI generated. And I was really quite pleased with that because obviously I've generated this from the demonstration garden we led for 12 years and to share those experiences and what to do, what not to do. Obviously, some more formal things that are required, but I found that very interesting that that was a comment that
yeah,
people made.
yeah.
So
Jem, I'm going to come to you in just a minute. I just want to relate one other thing. I was once part of a major national survey in Switzerland where we were looking at the use of money. This was back in the 1970s. Was the start of payment from the bank account to your account automatically and so forth. But there was the question of how people relate to money on the street for everyday purchases and doing everyday bill payment, paying and so forth. And the survey showed that the overwhelming majority of people in Switzerland wanted nothing to do with ATMs. We were just in the process of rolling ATMs out across the whole country. And they wanted nothing to do with it. They said, you know what? I love going to the teller who greets me by name, who knows who I am. That's so important for me. And so our conclusion was, okay, well, we're going to do it, but we're going to go slow and don't have any great expectations. Well, it was less than a year later when we went to observe, we saw that the previous year, the ATM was there, nobody was at the ATM, and everybody was in long lines at the teller. And a year later, there were long lines at the ATM and nobody was at the line for the human teller. And when we did the survey then, the conclusion was, well, I don't need that human knowing my business. I want to keep my business private. So I feel it's more private for me to deal with the machine. So we have to be very careful when people are saying, I wouldn't do this. For example, that one of the things in healthcare that keeps coming up, and Ashok, maybe you have some knowledge of this, but there's this feeling that people value the human contact to their doctor. And this is really important to us. But we asked the question and said, okay, if we have a case where the human surgeon has a 70 to 80% success rate, but the robot surgeon has a 99% success rate, which one are you going to go to for your surgery? And there we find in almost every case, people say, well, I'm going to look to see where am I going to get the best results? Where am I likely to get the best results? Where are the least number of failures? And that overrides the emotion. So the feeling is that so many people who say, I want that personal touch on so many aspects that the number of people that will actually do that in practice when it costs them something is far less. I think there's an exception to that. It's just like how many people want to get something that was handmade. They'll pay extra to get handmade over something machine. You want let's say a porcelain cup that was hand painted. People will pay more for that. But that's for the exception cup that they're going to put on a shelf somewhere. The one they use in their day-to-day life, they're interested more in the functionality. Does it hold liquid? And is it cheap enough that I could have a half a dozen? So those are the things. Ashok, do you have any thing that you might be able to add on the findings on people's personal reaction to human doctors versus AI doctors?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And I think healthcare is a relationship-centered activity still. So human is approximately the best when you have access to trusted quality experiences. And so that I think is the baseline assumption of healing and caring in the experience of a patient or a user with knowledge.
I'm wondering here again. It goes back because it just makes sense to a lot of people if it's known. Oh, my human doctor here has had 20 cases of whatever my suspected disease is. They've experienced that in 20 times, but this AI doctor over here has experienced it 10,000 times. And
Right.
so when you go, it's just like I know having just moved to a different state, that when I searched for doctors, I checked specifically for how much experience does a particular doctor or clinic have in an area that's of interest or concern to me.
Right. Yep. So I do think AI is augmenting the decision support that we give at the bedside. And I think it's good when people talk about healthcare that you think about it in terms of preventive support, uh, diagnostic strategies and affordability, and then therapeutics. I think those are the main tasks that doctors and healthcare providers do every day. And who you trust, how you trust, when you trust, and then what you do with the information you get is is common to both the AI system and us. And I do think crowdsourcing, rare diseases, there is a lot of advantage to having a good knowledge data architecture that allows you to refine your predictive analytics and your prescriptive analytics as you go forward. So part of the challenge in healthcare organizations at the C-suite level is that you're right, technology is moving way faster than the way we can train our workforce in the capabilities of AI literacy, and which tools to use if it's changing every month. How do we keep up with Cloud 4.6? And so I think it's not being afraid, it's learning which tools can be deployed in a safe, responsible, ethical, and usable way. And then finally, as you can see in the stock markets, there's an economic implication if Intel fails or if a company goes down and everybody wants to shift to some other brand. Vendors are equally involved in this solution.
Yeah.
So I think it is a complex ecosystem, and we have to learn the language and, like you say, mitigate the risk. There are lots of groups that are not having access to this high level expertise. And then there are a lot of groups that are going to be vulnerable to the experimentation of solutions that hallucinate or we can't critically appraise. Because even if you go to the grocery store now and you ask some of the the tellers to give you change, they may not know how to count the change if the machine doesn't work, or they give you the wrong amount. So it's important to stay in the loop while we're
Mhm.
um, thinking how we can work without the machine or with the
Mhm.
machine.
Two interesting things in this direction. In Japan, they've done studies on empathy using doctors, and they had AI doctors and human doctors. And when patients didn't know, was the communication coming from a human doctor or from an AI doctor, they actually preferred the AI doctor. Because, when we look at humans, not all humans are equal in their ability to be empathetic. So we have to be careful that we don't go and say we're always measuring the AI against the best of humanity. We have to measure against the average. And the So that was one particular finding. Another one is when we look at China, China is looking to automate the entire sequence. In other words, the tracking, the monitoring of the individual's health care would be consistent and ongoing through mechanization or electrification or whatever. And it would go directly to the AI diagnostic and treatment recommendation and so forth. And the patient would be helped directly. And so the question comes up about human in the loop. Do we need the human in the loop? And the idea, a lot of the discussion is, well, that's all well and good that we are able to monitor people more accurately. We're able to get the advantage of the diagnostic, the more advanced diagnostic, because it is apparent that the ability of AI to more accurately diagnose, if it has access to all the information, and not only from the current case but all the previous cases, that it's better at diagnosis. So hey, that's a good idea. Let's if we can do that and just keep the human in the loop. But then it came out that there's a party out there that is not going to accept the human in the loop, and that's the insurance companies. And the insurance companies are saying, well, look, if we get a 90% accuracy from AI and an 80% accuracy from the human, am I willing to allow a human with 80% accuracy to override a device with 90% accuracy? I don't want that. And the second thing is, even if they were equal, why should I pay for having a redundant effort? So the projections are that the insurance companies are going to be the one that insist that they're not going to pay extra to have a human in the loop. We're not talking about this year, next year, but we're talking long term when AI reaches the point that it is more accurate than the human in almost all cases, that it's the insurance companies are going to say it increases my risk because if they make a mistake, I've got to pay. It increases my costs, even if it doesn't reduce mistakes. So those
Yeah,
are
I think
two things.
yeah, those are really excellent points, Bill. And I do think we have to make the case for keeping humans in the loop, but there's also the need to have humans on the loop. So when the system doesn't work, when we have an error, when we have an exception, that we have some ability to ethically and responsibly um, adjudicate and mediate the solution.
Right.
I also respect Joan's experience with indigenous wisdom, and that's we have to become culturally proficient. So if AI is only learning and being trained by certain groups, it's going to have algorithmic bias, and we have to really be brutally honest and critically appraising any vendor or any solution that says it knows 8 billion people and adapt for the future. So I think the complexities of building healthcare interventions for both robotics, where we're doing procedures using machine solutions like Da Vinci and others, for cases, and then interpretation. So we have radiology and pathology that are being read right side by side, and then the radiologist has to double check to see if the interpretation was accurate or not.
Yeah.
And so those important once we get to over 95% accuracy and trust in the computer read information, I think that then we'll have to deal with what does society do with the 5% that aren't uh,
Right.
handled properly.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yeah.
great points. And I also say uh, healthcare teams are trying to do the lowest risk first. So like administrative billing services and correspondence. And then now we're at the point where, like you said, it's in, implemented in areas that we normally would just assign to humans, and that's where it's also getting riskier for us
Yeah. Well, this
as
is why I think it'd
providers.
be interesting to observe China when here, because
Yeah.
the U.S., you're 100% right. The U.S. Is moving more in administrative efficiencies and dealing from that low risk side of things. China has stated its goal is a health operating system, that it's the entire process. And China is more able to go and say, you know what? Hey, we're going to take the risk. In the US, one of the biggest, and the Western countries in general, it's one of the reasons to not jump into a lot of AI is who do we blame? I need to have a human I can blame if things go wrong, so that's what's uh, causing a lot of the Western development to go slow in a lot of areas. It's like the self-driving cars. We know from the studies, especially out of San Francisco, that the percentage of accidents and the severity of accidents goes way down with self-driving cars. The problem is, they're still struggling. Who are we going to blame? Who's bearing the liability in these cases? Jem, you've been so patient. Thank you so much. Please, Jem.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's been good listening to all of you and even the medical angle just now. But let me say firstly that I commend you as the leader of the group and others joining you for initiating this discussion. Surely persons will learn and others will share their own information. Let me say, in my own head, the words that come straight to me as I listen, and I've read a number of things and I've used the AI as well, is the matter of technology and the changes that have happened over the years, evolution in that respect. I think I'm old enough to remember when I got my first computer and being introduced to Word, to type, to write sentences, to compose a letter, and have a response from the system that underlines an error made in spelling, highlights where a comma was omitted, and that sort of thing. And you took it for granted and you fixed it because it drew your attention to it. But today I look back and I realize that in as much as I have learned or thought that I only have to press the enter key, ENTER, before what I'm putting on paper is read, understood elsewhere. As if when you're using AI, you have to write and then you press the enter key. There was technology that was reading every word I wrote, every letter I typed, and was responding to me by telling me I put in a comma where I didn't need one and I needed one where I hadn't put one in. Sorry. So we know that the technology has been evolving over the years. And it leads me to just the word evolve, because look at where we're coming from. Look at the days when men were in their different little countries and then they travel across the world and they're where you are and they're where, and we are where I am. So we know that that change is taking place and it will continue. And that's how we've reached the AI, which I hear has been in development for 20 years at least before they rolled it out to us, right? But there are so many things we know we can't control, and it's good that we show an interest and try to influence it. And when you spoke, for example, about the insurance company, preference for the ability to collect data, to analyze it and report it. We don't need so and so and so. But could we get to the stage where the insurance companies have no one to whom they would sell insurance? Because the system won't generate the revenue. So there has to be a balance somewhere along the line. If you want to keep your business going into the future, you're bound to need managers, fewer managers maybe, but you must have customers. Otherwise, what's the point? And when we get to the point of the 1 and the 90, I'm a little intimidated, by the way, by that ratio of 1% to 99, because although it would take many, many years to get there, and none of us will be there, and our children will have been groomed in the technology and wouldn't even be able to relate to what we are talking about today. The fact is that that 1% would want to sustain itself in life, but for whom? Their children like them, would that be still the 1%? So what is the value then of living and life? For whom do you perform? It's really, I mean, it's something we would think about. And even if we don't go as far as a ratio as high as or imagine as wide as 1 to 99, at what point would we be concerned? Because when I read in the earlier days, a year or two ago, about the impact which AI could have, that is replacing jobs. We know some clerical jobs, even in my profession, research jobs. I have used the thing to get information for me and saved me a lot of time. But if we think about that, then perhaps the thinking would be, so how do we use those resources that now become spare? These new unemployed people, what do we do? Do we look at new industries? Do we look at other ways in which they could make a contribution to society? Otherwise, the threat of them being eliminated will definitely arise. But if you're going to eliminate every unnecessary resource, at the end of the day, what is it we're living for? Not even we, those who survive. And people speak about the 3 big guys, the Gates and the Musk and I suppose, the Facebook guy. But what would there be for them? And when they are dead, as they will, what will the world be? I mean, at what point can we try to do something, and what can we do? Because it has a lot to do with power and influence. And I'm very happy that, we're talking and people are talking and people need to look at the possible outcomes. But realistically, though, 1 to 99 to me would be very far-fetched. It's almost as if we don't have a world. But even if it were 40 to 60, it still would be a serious concern. And the whole thought about eliminating the 40 since they have no use would arise.
Mhm.
It boggles the mind, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Realistically, what are we trying to achieve and what can we achieve? I believe this group can start something. You can lobby, you can write, and create awareness among people and so on. But at the end of the day, the objective must be to have effect, to have something happen. Will it cause an administration in any country at all to make a ruling that there shall be no more development in this area? Can people who don't have jobs go out and protest and say, we want jobs or you're going to die? Well, as you well know, the growth of the population in the world is already shrinking. So that will probably take care of a part of it, because people are getting so focused on using the technology and developing their brains and what they're doing that they're not having many children anymore. So I really just, notice I don't have a prescription, but I just want us to talk about
Yeah.
where can we seriously go from here in terms of influencing the outcomes. The last thing I will share with you is that last week I was reading, actually listened to something that spoke about the development in medicine in China and of course in the rest of the world. And that the equipment, the organization, the AI as we call most of this right now, they are taking exams in medicine like humans and they are getting much higher rates. So if at the end of the day, the ability to diagnose, the ability to prescribe, the ability to perform surgery, because when laparoscopy came in, people were shocked to know that you could go in and take out a person's organ or do something with it without cutting them wide open. So we know that the technology is evolving, but we need it as well. When I say need, the need has been created. So I'm saying all of this to say that I'm in the middle of it, trying to make best use of facilities that are available, skeptical about the impact on us and on the world, and still asking myself, what can I, joining a group, what can 200 people do to change it? And what small things can we do? What steps can we take? I suspect that is your objective anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. That's it for me for now.
Okay, Jem, you brought a number of important topics up, and it's very true. When we look, our club is a tiny group of people. So the question is, and we've basically said our job is to help protect our world from all the consequences of all the major problems, and we have to address all the problems because we don't know which one is going to be the one that could clobber us all. So we've got to address them all. And so we've got this little group of people saying, "Hey, our mission is to solve all the world's problems." So that's why we say, you can call us
Okay.
crazy.
Okay.
But the question is, so we're not going to go get some shovels and go out there and say, now our little group, we're going to go and ourselves physically fix all the problems of the world. So how can we make a difference? And we see that by facilitating, bringing great minds together to figure out how to solve the problems. So this is why instead of us going and saying, we know what the world needs to look like in a post-labor society, we're saying we need to get the smart brains to start talking about it and thinking about it. They're afraid right now because the things, the measures that they expect will have to be taken are so radical compared to today. They're afraid to be seen talking about it. That's at least our interpretation. The second thing that we can do, in addition to getting the brains together, is that we can try to influence people in the world, not necessarily by us directly influencing everybody, but by us working to try to influence the influencers that we see. Who are the people? Maybe the Secretary General, maybe some social media influencers, whoever we feel can reach other people and influence people, try to influence them and get them to see certain things that we believe could be risks that need to be addressed. So you're right on target on that. One thing we have to be careful of, a couple of years ago, as ChatGPT first came out, and even today, so many people, they use the chatbots. They use it almost like Google. They go and ask questions. where do I find this? How does this work? What's this? Or they go and say, make me a spreadsheet, make me a website, make me an app. But it's, hey, support me. But we have to remember, companies don't exist to give people jobs. At least most companies don't. They exist to do something. It may be something very selfish in terms of, hey, I made this company so I can make money, lots of money. That's the only reason I've got this company. But a lot of people make company because they think they have a better mousetrap. They think, oh, I can develop medications better. I can provide a service better than others. And so I want to make that contribution. So I end up with a company. But again, if my goal is because I have a medication that can help a lot of people, I need to keep the costs of providing that medication to the minimum so that I can help the maximum number of people. So from an ethical viewpoint, if I can produce that medication at half the price by simply not having any humans involved, I really owe that to humanity to do that so that I can help the majority, as many people as possible. So we run into a conflict there between is the purpose of this company to provide the maximum number of people with livelihood, or is the purpose of this company to do something, to make something, or provide some service to as many people as possible? And to do that, I have to have the lowest costs. Now, in the capitalistic side of the world, a lot of people today are looking and saying, "Oh, I know a way to do that cheaper, so we can make more profit than the other guy. So I can compete with the guy, that other supermarket chain down the street. I can do it for less, and so for the same prices that we sell for, we can make a greater profit, and that's going to get more people to buy our stocks, and we'll make more money." So you've got that, but that's a challenge. The other thing here that's very important to understand is where AI is going is not it's not necessarily to augment people. That's what people started doing when ChatGPT first came out is, oh, wow, look what I can do. And right now, most of the teaching, I'm under the co-founders of the Rotary Artificial Intelligence Fellowship. And, we talk about how training people in the use of AI and showing them what they can do, helping Rotary clubs use AI to do things. That's one kind of use case. But there's a lot of companies out there that are saying, hey, I can, with this AI and specialization, I can do a particular job better than anybody's been able to do it until now for a fraction of the cost. So it's like outsourcing. So we see right now a lot of people are saying, hey, you know what? Don't go to college because college jobs are going to be the first ones that AI are going to eliminate. Become a plumber, become an electrician. The interesting thing that we see is there is a massive, massive effort ongoing right now to eliminate a very high percentage of all the jobs in the plumbing, electrical, even lawn care businesses, not in the core competency, not in laying pipe or splicing wires, but all the support, the people who do the marketing, the scheduling, the billing, the inventory management for all of these types of companies, that is being taken over by companies that are saying, look, that's not your specialty. That's our specialty. We are specialized in marketing and scheduling and billing, and we'll handle all that for you. And those people are using AI to maximize the efficiency so that they can come with a small number of people and replace 100,000 workers that are doing that job across tens of thousands of plumbing and electrical and carpentry companies and roofing companies and so forth. So I think we have to stop thinking about what you would be able to do with AI. You're an architecting company. Oh, it'll do my drawings for me. It'll do this for me. And just imagine here, it will talk to your customer, figure out what your customer needs. It will plan the entire building. It'll do all the architect. It doesn't need you. So right now, the idea that we're developing AI to support human jobs, that's the piece that is going to go away in a relatively near future. So, Ian, you've been very patient. Um, thank you. Ian.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you, Bill. Essentially, what we've been doing is um, it's that quote from Hamlet, slip a level underneath them.
Well,
We need to go a little lower than our healthcare system, down into our food system and what it is that's been poisoning us for all these years. And because, you know, the possibility with AI is that we can look at the much bigger field and figure, okay, what's
Ian,
going
you're
on
you're
there?
you're
What
fading
is
in
the
and
ultimate
out.
preventative thing that we can do? Okay, sorry, I'm doing an AI installation here, so stuff may not be so good. Um, so what I'm saying is that we have a lot of in society that, as you say, is completely unnecessary. And what AI will do is get into that and figure out what have we been unnecessary work.
Mhm.
You know, in the medical field, we do lots of operations, but did we cause an awful lot of those problems? Have we eliminated food sources that were available in the Middle Ages that actually dealt with cancers that we don't have anymore?
Mhm.
Grow still seeds available, but they don't grow. They're not.
Yeah,
We
Ian,
don't grow them
you're
anymore.
you're
Think
breaking up. Maybe if you're installing something right now and it's maybe using a little bit too much bandwidth, maybe we can try a little later here because we're not able to follow you completely in your. Uh,
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, okay, thank you. But I think here you hit upon something that's very important. That a lot of the insurance companies have noticed that a lot of the costs that we have in healthcare is because we didn't have early detection of the problem. So by the time they detect the problem and do something about it, the costs of doing something are much greater, and the invasiveness of what has to be done is greater, so that there's great value in preventive maintenance, preventive medicine, or in early detection. And so we see that that insurance companies now are paying people for the fitness gym that they'll put that in their program. And China is very much they're looking to be able to track what's going on in people's bodies, even if you're not in a facility or whatnot, just in your life, that you have some kind of devices on you that'll measure everything. And they'll be able to detect things weeks before it's an issue. And I think eventually they'll be able to check on all your various um, vitamins, blood measurements, and on all the different chemical reactions in your body, and be able to trigger adjustments. Just like there's some of the insulin pumps right now for diabetes will continually measure your insulin levels, and it'll give you just the amount that you need to offset whatever's going on in your body. So, so I think this gets to actually into the bigger issue that a lot of AI that's coming is AI is it's not going to be a human asking for something. It's AI watching what's going on, having a big picture mission to take care. That's why they call it persistent AI agency. Because it's continually watching and observing, and it's able to, from its observations, take actions. About 2 years ago, Google developed a robot arm. It was just an arm, but it was an arm connected to cameras that would watch what people on an assembly line were doing. And it learned to do exactly what those other humans were doing just by watching it. Nobody gave it instructions, nobody programmed it. It just watched, it saw, that's what has to be done, and it started doing it. And this is where a lot of the effort in robotics is going on right now with the humanoid robots is that they're walking the streets and observing and learning. And this is a big part of the improvements that we're seeing in humanoid robots. And we have to remember China 10 years ago or so, yeah, it's about 10 years ago, they were nowhere in the area of autonomous vehicles. And the Tesla estimated that it would take them at least 10 to 20 years to catch up. China caught up in 3 years. And the why was that the case? China just made crude autonomous vehicles, but they tossed them out on the streets, and they said drive. And China has more of an undisciplined road situation. People are driving every which way, and they don't necessarily pay attention to the lines. Maybe there aren't any lines on the roads as much. So the Chinese autonomous vehicle producers were able to capture more exception situations much faster, and that gave them the ability to program the fixes or to develop the fixes for those exceptions. So China was able to dramatically increase the number of scenario situations that its vehicles were able to cover. This is one of the reasons why Tesla was so interested in moving more work to China, because you need examples. A doctor that always had a perfect situation and had very few cases, but they were very well documented cases for everything, they don't learn as much new. They get better in the repetitive thing they're doing, but they don't have an expansive experience. The doctor who has treated many more cases and a greater variation is learning on a continual basis. And so this is what we're seeing with the whole field of AI and robotics now. We're not dependent on the humans telling AI, oh, this is the way the world works. The AI is observing it directly now, and it's learning on its own. We're teaching it to learn. We're not teaching it what to do. It's figuring out what to do. There's Cicada, a Japanese company that has an AI called AI Scientist. And what it does is it goes out there and looks at situations, and it develops tens of thousands of hypotheses of what it's seeing. And then it goes through and it tests those hypotheses and keeps reducing the number down of what might be the truth until it gets to a confidence level. That's the future. That's where things are going on this. And as it does more and more of that, it's less and less dependent on humans to tell it anything. So this is something we have to keep in mind. Huma, you had your hand up earlier. Did you still have a question there or a comment?
Yes, I have a comment
Mhm.
to make. When we were talking about taking humans and keeping humans in the loop,
Mhm.
I think apart from all these things, all these revolution, whatever is going on, it is imperative to keep humans in the loop. Not for the sake that they are humans, but because they are population. If they will be redundant because of AI, where will they go? Number one. Number two, whenever we are talking about all the AI tools, all the new things in AI, they are imperative, they are in front of us, and we are using them and we are waiting to use more. But the thing is, again and again, when we teach human minds, either their children or adults, to develop, to keep working on on their cognitive skills, I think they will be able to survive with AI. Cognitive skills, I repeat.
Yes. I think the problem we're looking at is that, when we think here, it's human intelligence versus machine intelligence.
Yes.
And what we have to realize is that's not what it is. It's right now, it's the experience, the knowledge and experience of a single human versus the knowledge and experience of all humanity through all time, with the added advantage of knowing what actions and ideas over time led to the best results. And it's impossible for any single human to be better than the best of all humans over time. And
Yes.
that's what we're facing. And the problem is going to be that from a societal viewpoint, we can say we need to keep people occupied. People have to have a sense of purpose. And it's very important. And we're going to need them to buy the stuff. If we reduce the cost of making stuff, but nobody has a job, so nobody can afford to buy stuff, then that's a problem. Well, there's some examples, and especially I know there was some studies in South Africa, because South Africa in the period of apartheid had a situation where you had one segment of society that basically lived within itself. The things they produced in many cases were only for them. Now, that was in an era where they needed the labor of those masses that could not participate in their society and were not buying the stuff their society bought, but they needed the labor to be able to finance all that. But if that's all being replaced by AI and robots, then I don't need those other people, and those other people were never involved in the purchasing and so forth. So their models show us that it could evolve into a society where that top 1%, they're making super, super luxurious goods for themselves. And the AI, they own all the AI and the robots. So when the costs get down to be only a couple of percent of what they are today, that's okay for them. They don't care because the AI and the robots are doing everything they want. Their issue is, why should they do anything for that other 99%? They don't need them. They don't need them as producers, but they don't need them as customers either, because the AI will just make less. It'll make what they want. And so this is the risk. We look at it and say, hey, we as a society, the society has to work. But there are individuals, many individuals say, I don't care whether society works. I only care that my piece of society works. And this is where we've got to go and try to have influence to get people to say, no, you know what? We all have to, all of us have to be involved. And I forget which of you brought up the point with the we a little while ago. We've got to do this. It may have been Jem, where we need this and we have to do that. Many times at the UN, I would ask people that were talking about, well, we need to do this and we need to do that. And I said, I want to meet this we. Can somebody introduce me to this we? Because I don't see that we out there doing the stuff that we're saying needs to be done. And so this is where our little we can try to have influence, to influence that big we, so that we do think as we and us and not me and I. And that's what this little group in this session today is talking about when we say we need a contingency plan. We can't just allow the jobs to start disappearing and more people put up tents on the sidewalks because they lost their houses. And
Yourself
we,
have shared this universal basic income plan. So aren't they working on that
yes,
simultaneously?
okay. There are people discussing the universal basic income plan, but there was a side event. I understand. I wasn't there, but my understanding was in Doha in November at the Second World Summit, for social development, there was a side event that talked about universal basic income. And universal basic income is basically saying, okay, we'll make sure everybody's got the minimum to survive. But if I'm sitting there and seeing that the great majority of the people have the minimum to survive, they just get by, they can't do anything, they have nothing of value to trade for anything, including their own labor has no value. So that they're watching the people on the other side of the fence over there that are living the life of luxury and having the best food and every luxury you can imagine. That's not a desirable life. They called it in that side event. They called it techno feudalism because it's almost like having that little aristocratic layer there, and everybody else exists at their pleasure. Because if they don't fund the other people aren't going to survive.
And Bill, what if countries don't have universal income available? What if that is not available? How can we get over that particular barrier?
Well, that's going to be another question here. Countries that have a high per capita GDP are in a much better position to be able to provide people with a meaningful universal basic income than countries that don't. So, but let's break it into two issues because the one issue is saying, okay, how do we enable people to get a share of the resources and production of the world? That's really what we're talking about. How do we distribute that? For tens of thousands of years, it's been distributed by people doing work, by people picking berries or planting crops or caring for sheep or whatever. But when that goes by the wayside, we still need a way for people to distribute the production and the resources. So if that's done by taxing the wealthy, and right now, people, I don't know, somehow they come up with these ideas and they never try to put numbers to them to see if they're viable. But a lot of the discussion says, well, we only have to figure out a way to share the production of the robots of the technology, or to tax the profits that the robots and AI make by eliminating the job of the human. But that's not going to come anywhere close to doing what's needed. Because
well, is there an example, Bill? I know that you gave me an example a few days ago about China's planning toward those things.
Well,
especially job elimination due to AI infrastructure. So can we maybe segue into that? What does that look like as far as, them making that type of pivot as far as planning goes?
China's planning, I think here the first major plan in this direction was either in 2014 or 2017. That they came out with this plan calling for the pretty much total automation of their country. But their motivation to do that, their purpose for doing that was because they recognized that their working age population was shrinking relative to the elder population, which is exploding. And their concern was that they would not be able to service this large elder population that needs more assistance if they don't have enough people at the working age. So their automation came about not to save money by replacing workers, but to just have workers in the first place because they felt they wouldn't have enough human workers to begin with.
Didn't that automation come about due to their efforts to decrease the rise in population in their country? And is this kind of an after effect because in the elderly population, in their culture, culturally, you take in your mother, your father, your
Right.
grandparents. And if there's only one child between four people,
Yes.
two sets of grandparents, then there is a deficit that perhaps AI can meet.
Right. We have to go back here about 30, 40 years now, to China at a time when it was still among one of the poorest countries in the world and had a huge exploding population that they were having difficulty to feed. They had difficulty to be able to generate enough food to feed the population. And China came up with a one-child policy so that a woman could have a maximum of only one child. This results in more than reducing by half the population in a generation. So China went from a country that was just exploding in population, that was the most populous country in the world. They've now been surpassed by India, and China, at the current trend, may only have half the population in another 50 or so years that it has today. But along the way of getting there, what is happening is exactly what you said, that instead of having four elderly, two sets of grandparents, having 12, 15 grandchildren to care for them, that they now only have uh, well, basically one child that's going to be able to care for them. And so China had to come up with a way to increase productivity, so that they spent a lot of money on how to optimize production and factories and automation. This is why China is leading the world right now in the development of dark factories where there are no humans working. They're turning out cars at the rate. One factory I saw is it's less than 2 minutes, I think. Every 2 minutes, a car is coming off the factory, and the number of people involved in making that car is ridiculously small. Cell phones that are coming up, there's no humans involved, and they're generating cell phones are popping out of the assembly line here every couple of seconds. So, but they started off not to cut costs. They started off to be able to increase the productivity to be able to service a lot of people who were no longer of working age. Now they're seeing, oh, wait a minute, this is going to be an issue. How are we going to handle the people? Because they are starting to see a higher percentage of their population no longer having jobs. And so
Would
there's
we be able maybe to observe that um, fact and the planning that they've taken toward integrating those sort of AI structures, the robotics and things like that? This was something that had to do very much with culture. Could we look at the African continent even? And maybe even the Middle Eastern continent to say that um, gaining some sort of the AI and robotic structure could even help with the deficit that they are experiencing due to the participation of women in business and things of that nature, land ownership rights due to marriage, and all of that good stuff. Are we able maybe to approach this as far as deploying our Rotarians in those areas and drilling kind of back to education and the importance of that and the trajectory that it has toward an individual's life, their livelihood and lifestyle? Could we even maybe talk about that particular observation?
I think here, watching China, looking at China, we saw initially the plans came out and saying, hey, it was a mixed plan because a lot of their business was, hey, we have to increase productivity so we can become the manufacturer to the world. And in many segments, 80% of the world production is now coming out of China. And at the same time, China is investing in helping some of the third world countries build factories to produce locally. But at the same time here, the realization that, hey, wait a minute, we still got to figure out what we're going to do with all the people that are no longer needed. We initially we needed to have artificial people, if you would, to increase the production. But now we're hitting a situation where we've passed a tipping point where the number of people needed is less than the people that we have. So they're having a problem with college graduates finding jobs and certain segments finding jobs, but they have not yet really published a plan for the post-labor economy yet. But the realization that they have to do that is now becoming very strong in China. And we'll see over the next year probably some discussion coming out. I expect the discussion to take place in China first. But we have to think China has less pressure to deal with a large unemployable population because they don't have that large a population of people that are going to be displaced, as let's say a Pakistan or an India might have. So we can watch that. I think here with regards to the education and so many of the other points you mentioned, especially looking at some of the developing countries, it's like our discussions that we've had in the last week about, okay, yes, education. We got to focus on education. Education's super important. But we have the problem that education is something that's going to have an outcome in maybe 10, 15, 20 years. But this AI stuff is going to have an output in 2, 5, 7 years. So we can't link them necessarily together. We're going to see as soon as the sense that the jobs aren't there, and it's starting already, but because people are not getting the entry-level jobs coming out of the universities as much. So the awareness is beginning. But in 2 to 3 years, we're probably going to see a sense that education's not going to help you for a job, or it will help you for a couple of years, because there's probably going to be a boom demand for people to help companies automate, to help companies deploy AI and other automation. But once that's done, once we get the AI that itself is now the designer of improving efficiencies, when AI is doing that job better than any human, then those jobs are going to go away as well. And so we've got to, when we talk about the job situation and not just jobs lost due to AI, job loss due to just standard automation and job loss due to all the mergers and consolidations, that job loss in general, that has to be addressed independent of anything else, because they're not dependent. We're not gonna fix the job situation with education. Reskill and upskill. There's an interview out there with Sal Khan from Khan Academy, where he's saying that, okay, everybody's gonna need to upskill and reskill, and so he's looking to transition Khan Academy to help people upskill and reskill. And he even admitted one of the challenges they're getting is to figure out, well, what do we upskill and reskill people to? What job out there is there going to be demand for regardless? If we're saying that AI and robots, oh, by the way, just for your information, and the projection, AI's projection on when are humanoid robots going to reach the stage where they will be walking on the street, they'll be holding conversations with you, they'll be talking with you, and you're not going to be able to tell whether you're talking to a biological human or a robot. They will have all the dexterity, they will have the skin warmth, they will have the touch, they smell, taste, you name it. When is that going to happen? And it came out saying we could see the first such robots that we can't tell the difference unless a regulation says they have to have some big mark, I'm a robot, or something like that. But you're not going to be able to tell what's a biological human from a mechanical human. It could happen as early as 2034, but it's estimated that by 2040, that it's almost 90% likely that that will be the case, that we will not be able to tell the difference. That we got to think that's not a long time. We have to think COVID began just 6.5 years ago. So that's 6.5 years. Take ourselves 6.5 years into the future, and we're at 2032. We're very close to where it's a 65% likelihood that there will be humanoid robots on the streets that we can't tell the difference even when we stop and talk with them. They move like us, they talk like us, they hold and use tools like us, they twitch their faces and eyes like us. So, that maybe a lot of us are not imagining that things could go that far, that fast. And it's not 100%. It's only a 65. I think it's something like a 48 to 65% likelihood by 2034. So at any rate, so we have to take the timing into consideration and figure out, okay, the worst case that could happen is if the job loss starts in earnest in 2 years. And I had a conversation yesterday with my son. My son is a top corporate systems executive of one of the largest robotic companies in the world. He's not involved in the robot side at all, just the regular business, IT applications for all the business practices, SAP type of stuff. And up until a month ago, as many of you know, for years now, I've been talking about AI and its potential. He's been one that is poo-poo. That AI stuff, it's nowhere. It makes so many mistakes. It's not useful, and he didn't want it in his company in any way, shape, or form. And about a month ago, he just said, well, let me give this Claude thing a try. And he said to Claude, okay, I want you to make me a Hello World website. Boom, it made it like that. And he said, okay, that's pretty good, but it's not really that good. He actually asked it, well, what do you think? And it said, it's not really that good. And he said, okay, make it better. And bang, it made it better, deployed it, the whole thing. And then he went in and started to say, well, could you make an app that does this? And could you make an app that does that? And within hours, he had an app that has evolved, and he's got maybe 6, 8 hours into it, that can handle every business function other than the ones that are done by SAP. And he's got development teams in India, Malaysia, different countries in Europe, North America, and he's going to start layoffs next month. He says, look, I am able to do the work at less than 1% the cost and less than 1% the time. AI does it for me. I don't need the development staffs anymore. And the thing that was most interesting is he went from saying this AI it's not really doing anything. It's going to be decades before anything useful comes out of it, to saying right now, we got 2 years. He says in 2 years, nobody's going to have a job. So that he changed that 4 weeks. 4 weeks led to that radical a change in opinion of where this is going. Joan.
I'm just sitting here thinking all the conversations is about jobs. But what about way of life, way of living? And it's such an American, it's such an American obsession with having a job and how much money you make. And when do we get to a point when enough is enough? Like, these people, five corporations that want to control the world, like, good luck. Imagine how depraved their life is, that they can't enjoy their money. They have to think of ways of controlling people. So that's the first thing. So because they're human beings that are doing it. Um, I, I just think that the conversation has to change about the job thing. It has to be that we're discussing ways of having a life. How do we learn? How do we connect? How do we grow food? How do we live in our neighborhoods? And why does 1% of people earn that? Oh, I made $1 billion in the last 3 months. Like, why is that acceptable? Why do we talk about that? Like, um, it, I just feel that life is not just about how much money you make. It's about how you live.
Joan, I think there's two things to what you were just saying. One of them relates to what I was just saying about the we. We have to be very careful when we use the we, whether those other people consider themselves part of the same we that we're talking about. The second thing is the Maslow's hierarchy of going from the physiological of existing. The reason is when you don't have a job, and that means you don't have an income, and that means you don't have any food. It means you don't have a roof over your head. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about money.
Yeah, but Bill, if we have some sort of conversations around social equity, so you and I do the common cluster, we're talking about, some sort of income that everybody has. Universal basic income is what the conversations are. Something that allow people to live, and then they can make supplementary income. And that's their choice how they want to do it. They may want to have a full-time job. They may want to have a full-time business. They may want to do what it is that they want to do. But right now, I mean, I learned the other day, I had no idea that in order to get health care in the United States, you have to have a job.
Well, no, there's Obamacare still out there, but otherwise, yes.
So, like, of course, people are going to want to have a job. Like in Canada, I went to Montreal last week for this conference, and I brought my Ontario OHIP card because we're federally, just in case anything happens.
Right.
And it's recognized. I don't have to worry about like, oh my God, I've got to, I mean, I have my own business, so but there's some security in that. And
Yes.
people say, oh, it's a social thing. Okay, yeah, you're labeling it so that you don't have to deal with it. But what about if you are, I'm just saying that all we talk about the level of how we live is having a job. And the conversation needs to change. And that's why AI will win, because that's all it talks about is how many jobs are going to go. But if it's a way of life, and they can do some of the jobs that people don't want to do, like, imagine living, working in a factory, which I believe that we were created over the last 100 years to become zombies anyway, because the system has made us that way. People are on the treadmill of getting up early. I'll tell you, I have a friend that she wakes up at 5:30 in the morning. And I said to her, and what time do you get home? And she says, oh, I get home around 6. I said, so you're in an office building and you're never in the sun in the winter? She goes, oh, I never thought of it that way. I said, come on. What kind of life is that? Because she's near retiring.
Right.
And she says, I can't sleep past 5:30.
Yeah. But the thing about it is as again, going back to the we, that's our whole purpose. What we are saying is we need to get the people of the world talking about how do we move to a better life. It's the interesting thing is the heads of these tech companies, most of them are saying here that they hope they can eliminate all jobs. Their goal is to eliminate jobs because they're saying that frees people from the chain of having to work for their survival.
But at least they can't free people because, of course, people are enslaved now for jobs because of certain things like the healthcare and stuff like that. In Canada, that doesn't exist. But I mean, America is the richest country in the world, but it's owned by 5 corporations mostly. Like that is
It's
sick.
not the corporations, it's the people. It's
Yeah,
individuals.
it's sick. It's sick.
right? So we know,
know.
we know here that I think it's 10 or 20 people own half of all the wealth in the United States. They own
And that's okay
more
with
than
Americans.
150
That's okay.
million people.
And they celebrate them like they're celebrities, and they treat them like, you know who I am, all that.
You know what,
My
though,
God.
Joan? Think back through history. In the era of feudalism and kings, how many, when there was just widespread serfdom
But
and
none of
poverty,
them talked
how many
about it.
humans were willing to sell their labor to subdue their neighbors?
Lots. And that's how the system was, but they never had a constitution that says all men are equal.
Mhm. But that's a piece of paper.
I'm just
In the end
saying,
of the day, it goes
the Americans' exceptionalism says we're different, but
yeah.
they're not.
Yeah. So the thing about it is what we are able to do is to try to influence people to say, you know what? You need to, if you want to get to a society that's fair and more equitable, you got to start talking about it. You got to start aiming for it. You're not going to get there if you don't aim for it. You're not going to get there if you only complain, but don't do anything. So
That's
what
right.
we need to do is we need to get people to go and say, yeah, we need a contingency plan that's going to create some kind of fairness among all of us at a time when the current economic model of the world that has existed for tens of thousands of years, that is based on human labor. If you do some human labor, you can trade the fruits of your human labor for the fruits of other people's human labor, and that's the way the world has worked. If you want something to eat, you've got to produce something. But if we're going to a world where your production capacity has no value, then we got a problem because your victory gardens don't work too well if I don't have access to any land
Our water.
and or water. And we're moving towards an era where potentially not only do all the robots and factories belong to the owner class, but all the land will.
Yeah.
And
And
I
so,
think as we discuss planning and strategy,
yes, Jerica.
biggest mottos is that we are a part of the global community, and we seek to serve our global community because of the unique standpoint that we have in our club. So any planning and things like that have to include the variables of those different global communities and their
Right.
struggles.
And
And
this,
that people have options, that people have options.
but that starts with awareness. As
Yeah.
long as people think, oh no, nothing's ever going to change anyway,
Yeah.
I watch on the news, and so often you'll see somebody that's the director of a new museum display, and they're saying here, okay, that's the most important thing. We got to work on that. And but there's no discussion of climate change given here the situation that we're seeing in the world today. There's no discussion of that. Hey, we're only maybe a couple of years from the massive job loss.
And
And
Eugen, you had your hand up for a little bit
yeah,
now.
yes,
Yeah,
go ahead, Eugen.
yeah. Actually, I think John has a really important point. Yeah, the world today, and no matter how it was based on land ownership and labor. But that picture is going to change when robots
Yes,
will do the work. So they don't. So we need to find a way that lets go of these two principles. Yeah.
that's
So,
exactly what we're
so,
talking about. That's what we're saying is
so then I don't understand. John brings it in, and I hear objection from your side. I missed something there.
no. What I'm saying here is the problem is to say we. She's speaking of society. We as a society have to change the way we think. And what we're saying is just because we wish that and think that's the case doesn't make it happen. So we, the little we, our club, our group here, we've got to figure out how do we get the big we to change its thinking. That's what we're
Okay.
talking about. Because
Thing
if
is
they
that we're
don't
not
change,
going to, you're not going to change everybody. Like what
no,
you can only do is, I mean, I often use the whole idea of religion. Religion at the basis, I'm not religious, by the way, but I follow this basis. What do we want? We want to be good people, and everybody has an interpretation of what that is. We want to have family and connections and enjoy our lives, right? Like the whole